Hello and welcome to another edition of the TimeFlies podcast. I'm your host, Dariel, and I got my boy in the building with me. I got my guy, Reed. Reed, what is good, my boy?
How's it going, D? Thanks for having me.
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. Listen, man, I've been wanting to have you on the pod for a while because this whole Miami Heat season has been fucking crazy. So
Yep.
I want to get the perspective firsthand from a Miami Heat fan. I want to hear the ups and downs. I want to hear the excitement, the sadness. So
Heartbreak, some would say.
exactly, the heartbreak. So, man, I just want to hear your take from the season. Like, what were you proud of? What were you disappointed in? And yeah, man, I just want to hear from your side, wherever you want to go with this, my boy.
Yeah, no, look, I think let's just start off with I don't want to call it the elephant in the room, but I guess that's the appropriate term, even though I don't like it. But
Mm-hmm.
I came on this podcast with you before the playoffs even started, and I said I love the Heat, lifelong Heat fan, but I thought this team would get bounced after the first round, if that. Like I didn't even think they'd make it that far.
Everybody
Um,
did, yo.
Yeah, but like I should know better. Like as a Heat fan, I should know better. I should know that like there are moments where Heat culture will carry you beyond what the expectation is. Um and but it's like it wasn't for the reasons for that weren't anything that could logically track from the season to the postseason. So what I mean by that is the Heat were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams all
Mm-hmm.
year. And it's not because these guys can't shoot. It's because for whatever this team was sort of snake bit. There were injuries, there were inconsistencies in the lineups. Um, Struce would get hot and then he'd be cold for weeks on end. And then
Right.
same with Duncan Robinson. And so going into this postseason, some of the guys that you would normally rely on, you just weren't sure what you were going to get from them. And then Hero gets injured in the play in,
No, no,
or
he got
or
injured first
first
round against
game.
Bucks.
Yeah, first game against the
I
Bucks.
think so.
So
Yeah,
you
first or
basically
second.
don't have and so you have like this team that wins on tenacity and grit and toughness, and that can get you far in the postseason. I didn't think it would carry him this far. I just thought there was, seeing the way the regular season played out, there was such like everything was difficult, nothing came easy. And but in a weird way, that's what prepared them for this postseason, was that the Heat won more games that were close late than any other team this season by, I think, a wide margin.
Mm.
And so when you had these tight moments late where a lot of teams shrink, you'd have someone like Jimmy Butler rise up and just elevate to another level and play like Michael Jordan in some cases. I mean, I don't want to
Him
be
being Jordan,
blasphemous.
bro.
Like,
Him
I don't
being
want to be
fucking Jordan.
blasphemous, but he basically, like, he would elevate his game to that. Like, he became that dude.
Yeah.
So look, am I proud of this team for exceeding expectations and making it all the way to the finals? Absolutely. Am I still disappointed in the results? Absolutely. I think like when you make it as far as they did, and this team has shown you time and time again what they're capable of doing, despite what the expectation is. Yeah, I struggle to reconcile this season, because it by every sense of the word, it was a successful season. But in terms of the final result, no. Like when you make it to the NBA Finals, you want to win a championship,
Yeah,
and
you get
anything
that
short
far.
of
Yeah.
that,
Complete the
yeah,
job.
anything short of that is a disappointment. There's just no other way to say it. But like that's not to say like I'm disappointed in this team in the way Celtics fans are disappointed in their team.
Right.
um,
Yeah. Celtics got
you know what
problems,
I mean?
yo.
It's
Yeah. I
like
mean,
I
go ahead, go
enjoyed
ahead.
the ride. I enjoyed the ride.
Yo, but like, just to like, I guess, cut you some slack or like join you, like, you're right. Every basketball who's not a casual fan who watches ball and has been watching basketball for a while, we should have known that the Miami Heat, like, they are a postseason team, man. They're like they might be the definition of a team that just coasts through the regular season. They're just trying to get through the regular season with no huge injuries, and they're just trying to get through it. And then once the playing part of the season comes in and the playoff season comes in, that's when like the whole team fucking resurfaces like Michael Myers, as if like he gets stabbed like 80 times and then he just like sits up. That's like the Miami Heat organization. So like
Well,
I'll go ahead, go ahead.
and I was just gonna say, not only that, but like people's expectations, like mine, should have changed after round one. When you do what you did to the Bucks, you are no longer the team we thought you were going into the postseason. Like,
Mm.
I don't care what happened in the play. I know they lost to Atlanta and then they had to beat the Bulls to get in. But as soon as you embarrass the Bucks in five, I don't care if Giannis was injured. He was there. Like, Drew Holiday is still an elite defender. He's an elite point guard in this league. The Brooke Lopez is a problem for the Heat. They're more than the Bucks are more than capable of beating the Heat without Giannis, and they got
100%.
him. They got embarrassed. So
I agree with you. And on top of that, like everybody, the talking heads, all the talking heads, they were saying how like the best team in the NBA. A lot of them were saying Denver, and a lot of them were saying Milwaukee. And then Giannis goes out, and supporting cast can only win you one game
yeah.
against the Miami Heat. It's like,
And by the way, Giannis played in three of those games. Like, let's not let's not act like he missed the entire series. He was in the series long enough to make an impact.
whoa, I don't know about that, my guy. He missed. He played like he barely played game one because that back injury happened pretty early. He missed game two. He missed game three.
Did he
He
miss
missed
game three? I thought he played in game three.
No, he missed game three and four, and he came back in game five, and that's when they lost.
He definitely played in at least two full games. He had to have been back by game four. Yeah, he played in. He got injured in game one,
Right.
and then he played in games four and five.
Okay, so he missed two and three. Okay.
Yeah, he played 38 minutes in game four and 42 minutes in game five.
Yeah, man, but those two games, that's a big chunk, especially in the playoffs, man. You like obviously you need every team needs their best player, but I'm with you that the supporting cast who's
Well,
been
but also, hold on. Here's
yeah,
the thing, though.
yeah, yeah.
You're coming back in game four. Game four was at home for Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
And or wait, no, sorry, that was at Miami. Game five was at home in Milwaukee.
Right, they closed it out,
Like,
yeah.
and by the way, and he's another game back, like removed from the injury. He's another day of rest. He's a little bit healthier, and you let the Heat. By the way, that was the overtime game. That was the game that
Mm-hmm.
the Bucks should have had wrapped up, and Jimmy had that last second shot to send it to overtime, and then the Heat just took over from there. Like, that's what I'm saying. Where Giannis, he may not have played in every game. He was in the series enough to make an impact, and they couldn't win either game that Giannis was in.
But man, like he wasn't 100% though. He wasn't 100%. Like that back injury was bad. Like he landed really bad, and ever since then he was just like pushing through it. You could see when he was sitting on the bench, he was like
Yeah,
grimacing. So like I
I
get what
don't
you're
look.
saying.
I don't want to make excuses. The funny thing though is, in a weird way, this is gonna sound counterintuitive, but as a Heat fan, when we're playing the Bucks, I would much rather Giannis play than
Mm,
not,
I get what you're saying.
because when Giannis is on the floor, the Bucks don't stretch the floor as much, and there are times. Don't get me wrong, especially when him and Brooke Lopez are on the floor at the same time, they just they destroy us in the paint. They absolutely own the paint, but when Giannis is in, they're not stretching the floor as much. Chris Middleton's not taking as many threes. Drew Holiday's not taking as many threes. The role players are not taking as many threes. So I'd much rather them thrive in the paint if especially if we're hot as a team. Like if we're hitting if our shooters are hitting, I want Giannis in the game, and because it's gonna give us a slight edge, I think, in terms of our scoring output.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, man, but like again, Miami Heat, they were just playing against who was in front of them. So like
Yeah,
like you keep saying, there's no excuse. You can make up excuses for Milwaukee, but at the end of the day, Miami Heat was playing whoever was in front of them, and they got the job done. And Milwaukee Bucks, when Giannis was out, they did not. And even when Giannis came
yeah.
back, they still didn't get the job done. So
And by the way,
hats off.
just look at, I know not all injuries are created equal, but like just look at the next series when the Heat played the Knicks and Jimmy
Mm.
Butler had the severe ankle injury, and Heat backups took the Knicks starters to like a one possession game essentially late. And
Yeah,
then they still wrapped it up in, was it five? Like, I don't even think it got to game six, or did
no, no,
it?
no, again, no.
Yeah.
I mean, Miami Heat, they won in six, and the
Yeah.
sixth
And
game was
Jimmy
in
Butler
Miami. Yeah.
certainly wasn't 100%, but it was enough to get past them.
So okay, so where I want to go now, first and foremost, the first round against Bucks, he was averaging 37 fucking points, six
Yeah.
rebounds, and he was averaging 5 assists, 44% on 3-point percentage, and he was shooting 5.5 3-pointers. So it wasn't a fluke. So having said all that, in the first round against the Bucks, he had to go superhuman because even though Giannis was out, he kind of figured that this was his moment. Giannis was out and he could just take over the fucking series, and that's what he did. Moved on to the
Yep.
Knicks. But as soon as as the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler got to the second round, granted he had an ankle injury, so it might have slowed him down. But
Hmm.
I think Jimmy, he didn't need to go superhuman. Like
I
he
agree.
was he was totally fine with Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin picking up the slack. And I think like even if he didn't get injured game one against the Knicks in the second round, I think he would have been fine with his like pulling back a little bit with all that energy and all that like exertion that he's
Yeah.
putting out. It's just so interesting, man, because like everybody right now is talking about Jimmy Butler as if like the playoff run, the entirety of the playoff run is fucking legendary. And I don't want to burst your bubble, but the first round was legendary. Everything after the first round, Jimmy's good. Like he's good. He's not doing like round two, the Eastern Conference Finals and the finals. Like he was a good player, but he wasn't like. You feel what I'm saying?
I do. I would disagree when it comes to the Eastern Conference Finals, but we can come back to that when we get there. I think let's just take the Knicks series for now.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. He definitely pulled back. But I think in fairness to Jimmy, he like the role players, the guys you mentioned, Struess, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, they stepped up in that series. They had much more of an impact than they did against the Bucks. And actually, Caleb Martin was really great throughout the entirety of these playoffs until the finals.
Until
Then
the finals, yeah.
then like having Aaron Gordon on him or Michael Porter, like having these guys switch on to him made it difficult. But up until that point, like the Knicks series especially, like you had these guys stepping up in a way that didn't require Jimmy to go out and score 35, 40 points for them to win. You
100%.
the Heat are never going to be married to a singular game plan. And this is something, not to go on too much of a tangent, but this is something that, I've been critical of Devin Booker for the last few years, where I can count there have been so many Suns games where Book will go off for like 40, 50, 60 points and people are losing their minds,
Mm-hmm.
but they never win those games. It's
Mm.
always a situation where like Book goes off, it's like an amazing performance, and yet the Suns still walk away with an L. And so I've never been impressed by like a player who gets his and yet his team still loses. And so I think that's where you see like a series like this, where like against the Knicks, where Jimmy pulls back a little bit, role players step up, and they still get it done in five. Like Jalen Brunson made
Nah,
it
six.
interesting. Oh, it was six. Okay. Either way,
Yeah.
Jalen Brunson made it interesting. Um,
Man, the
but
Knicks are a fucking joke, bro.
I never felt worried as a Heat fan. I remember thinking like Jimmy's got enough confidence to wrap this series up. So like, there's no reason that I need to be
I
worried.
want to say the Knicks should have won that series, but at the
No, they
same,
shouldn't have.
yeah, at the
The
same
Knicks are
time,
not. It's funny. I'm about to say something that I've been, as a Heat fan, I've been really mad about because this is what everyone says about us. The Knicks were not talented enough to win that series.
that's
Like,
fair.
and this is what everyone has said about the Heat. So I hate using that term, but like Jalen Brunson is the only one that's not only talented enough, but with this sort of like intestinal fortitude to push the series beyond where it should have ended.
100%.
And but like the rest of that roster, top to bottom, I don't think there's another starter on the Knicks that would start for any of the playoff teams that remained at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right. Julius Randle needs to go. RJ Barrett is just like, I don't know. At this point with
He's
RJ,
talented, but he's not consistent.
yeah, I don't know, man. Emmanuel quickly, like he was the second runner up. He was a runner up in six man
He's a
of the year
nice
this season.
player, but he
Yeah,
might be the
but
only other one. He might be the
no,
only other one.
but the thing is, in the playoffs, he fucking shit the bed. Even in
Yeah,
round one with the Cavs, like he didn't even show up. Obi Toppin showed up. That's great, but like
but even Obi is like I think I can remember like 1-3 he took all series. Like he's a good defensive player, but offensively he gave the Knicks nothing, at least against the Heat.
yeah,
And then Josh Hart is I think a fifth, like a sixth or seventh man off the bench for most teams.
yeah. Josh Hart is more like a hustle garbage man
Yeah,
with a little
yeah,
bit of skill. But yeah, the Knicks, that's a different topic. But yeah, man. So okay, so then after the Knicks, then you're going up against fucking Boston Celtics, which has been the
yep.
fucking at this point. I don't know if you could call it a rivalry, but it's damn near close to it because you guys are
No, it's absolutely rivalry because this
okay,
goes back
cool.
to because think about it, like this goes back to like the Heatles era, like with like Paul Pierce,
Mm,
KG going up against
yeah.
the like LeBron, D Wade, Chris Bosh team, like that. I
Yeah.
fucking hated the Celtics back then. I absolutely hated, and hell, even in the '06 run for the Heat, like I remember hating the Celtics even back then. Like this goes, it's certainly not Lakers Celtics in terms of like history and
Yeah.
all that, but like I think it's
But it's there.
absolutely a rivalry at this point.
Yeah, it's there. So you guys go up fucking 3-0,
Yeah.
which is bonkers, bro. Which is bonkers. And I got a little ahead of myself. When they won game three, I was like, it's a wrap. It's they're winning in four. And then obviously Boston comes all the way back. Like,
Yep.
okay, in that time period, when Boston won game one, when they won game two, and then when they won at the buzzer with game three, like what was your emotions like? Were you kind of expecting it? Were you super pissed? Were you like what were you where were you at?
You're talking about games 4 through 6.
Yes. 4 through 6, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So game 4, I somewhat expected it. I'm like the Heat have been on for 3 straight games, and they're coming off, even though the Knicks weren't, I don't think, talented enough, it was still an intense series. And Boston sure was a little bit gassed from the series before against Philly.
Definitely.
So going into game 4, I'm like, all right, if there's a letdown spot, this is it. And then game 5, I was still fairly confident in the Heat, because Boston has historically this season not been great at home. And the Heat have been in the postseason, anyways, a really good road team. So game 5, I thought would be where they wrapped it up. So going into game 6, I was nervous. I was like, all right,
Mm.
game 6 in Miami, all the momentum is on Boston's side. If you don't wrap it up here, that does make me nervous.
Yeah.
But I know this is gonna sound weird. After game 6, I was weirdly calm. And
That's
I think
crazy.
it's because at that point, everyone started writing the Heat off. They're like, that's it. They're going to let the ball drop. Everyone's like, Boston is now showing what they are or who they are. They got momentum on and like everyone started picking the Celtics. And that was the moment where I was like, oh, we're going to win game 7.
That's
Like it's going to
crazy.
happen. Like, I think part of like the Heat perform their best when everyone writes them off, and whether they admit it or not, like they hear what people say about them. Um,
But that's crazy though,
and
because the way you guys lost in game six was such an emotional letdown, bro.
But see here, that's the thing.
From
It's
the outside looking
yes,
in.
it's an emotional letdown for the wrong team. Meaning, for most teams, that loss is devastating. For most teams, they go, "That was our chance. We let it slip away. It's over." The way I see it, and the way I think the Heat saw it at the time, was we didn't even play a great game, and we still should have won.
Mm.
Like they got the stop they needed. Marcus Smart missed the three to send it into to over to or to seal it for the
Right.
Celtics,
Yeah.
and then it was by a hustle play, a great play by Derek White. But let's be honest, a stroke of luck. He got that shot off with .1 or .2 of a second left.
Literally, the way that Boston needed the ball to bounce off the rim
Yeah,
is the way the ball
it's
bounced. It's
yeah.
insane.
So I think like the Heat were looking at it from the perspective of we outplayed them late, even though like they played the better game throughout. We didn't even play a great game. We played better down the stretch. And if not for arguably the luckiest shot of the last decade, like that series is a wrap. So I think going into game 7, they're like, oh, we got this. Especially because Boston, like I said, like they'd been a terrible home team throughout the postseason, and even the regular season. And at that point they hadn't had a letdown at home yet in that series since what, game 2 or 3,
Mhm.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, it's like the momentum is trending for Boston, and everyone's jumping on board the hype train, which is almost always when they let people down. So I
So
was like,
yeah,
I can't explain it. I don't know, like other than what I like, sort of outlined just now. Like I just felt weirdly calm going into game 7. I'm like, if
that's
we're
crazy.
if everyone's writing us off, I feel better about our chances than I ever have.
That's crazy. But in game seven, what I want to ask you, obviously you're giving the retake, you're giving the retake of like the Miami Heat season. But what I want to
Yeah,
ask you is in game seven against Boston, Boston mentally, they're just not there. And literally after the
yeah, they
first
didn't
play,
rise up.
yeah, when Jason Tatum rolled his ankle and literally the first play of the game, Jalen Brown needed to pick it up. He didn't want to pick it up. He started having turnovers. Literally, you see him, he can't dribble with his left hand. So what I want to ask you is like, what do you see in Boston that they need to do to get over the hump? Because last year they made it to the finals, this year Eastern Conference Finals, and I feel like they just can't get over that hurdle. Is it something with the mentality? Is it the players on the floor? Is it the coach this season? Like, I don't know. Can you like, and since you guys have been playing them a lot lately,
Yeah,
is there something that you can say to be like, this is what they need to do to fucking finally get over the hurdle?
I think it's a combination of things. I think if Ime Udoka was still the head coach in Boston, I think they would have enough talent to get over the hump. It would just be a matter of when.
Mm.
Um, when the whole situation went down last offseason, they insert Joe Mazzulla as the head coach. And you don't have, because this is what people have been critical of Jason Tatum for, and I think rightfully so. As much as he admires Kobe and wants to be like Kobe and is more talented than Kobe, he does not have that killer instinct, that Mamba mentality that we always talk about. He's not the alpha dog that Kobe or Jordan or even to an extent LeBron is. Like LeBron, I wouldn't put on the same level as Kobe or MJ in terms of mentality, but I'd certainly put him light years ahead of Tatum. I don't think Tatum has that killer instinct when he's on the floor. I don't think he like we saw this when Grant Williams poked the bear with Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler like got in his face. He's
That should
talking
have been
trash.
Tatum.
He's like this dude can't guard me, like jawing the entire time, and then he elevates his game, and we witnessed that happen firsthand.
Right.
Jason Tatum doesn't have that in him. He does. It's funny. Like it makes me think about The Last Dance. Like, do you remember the that episode where they were talking about the playoff series against the Hornets after BJ Armstrong was there and he had the game where he went off. And Jordan was like, "It's easy to talk shit when you're up. It's easy to talk shit when you're winning, you're playing a good game, you're up by 10 or whatever."
I think he's in the
It's
locker room like swinging the bat or some shit with a
yeah.
cigar in his mouth.
He's like, it's hard to do it though when you're down or
Fucking
when you're
maniac.
losing.
Yeah,
Like, and
yeah.
he's like, but he still does it. And like that to me is like Jason Tatum is the former, right? Jason Tatum is the guy that like, yeah, after game 7 against the Sixers when they win, he's like, yeah, humbly, I'm the best, I'm like the best player in the league or whatever. And it's like, you don't see that from him ever when the team is down. You don't see that like killer
Yeah.
instinct where he's like, I'm going to will this team to win. I'm going to put them on my shoulders and I'm going to will them to win. You don't see him exert himself in that like alpha way in those moments. It always comes after the fact.
Now
Whereas you compare him to Jimmy,
yeah.
Jimmy does it during even when the Heat were down when Grant Williams got in his face. The Heat were down like I don't know. I don't remember how much at the time, but like that was the moment where Jimmy's like, all right, I'm going to take over this game, and he did.
Now in Jason Tatum's defense, he's 25 years old.
Yeah,
So and history has shown us that an NBA player's prime is like 27, 28, and that's when all the greats started finally putting it all together. Michael Jordan won his first title at 28. LeBron, I believe, at 27, 28, one of those two. So like maybe this is just something Jason Tatum he's gonna have to go through repeatedly to finally fucking get that light bulb to switch off. But the thing is that it's weird because he's literally been in the playoffs and making super deep playoff runs since he was a fucking rookie. So like it's kind of like he has like a little bit of a head start in like most
yeah.
NBA players' careers. So that's why we want to see it because people that watch basketball, we know that he's had so much experience already that it's kind of like, all right, man, like you're at a point where you know what it takes to get to the championship at age 24 last season. Like, dude, we need to see more. We need to see you just being like, fuck it, I'm the best player. I'm gonna talk my shit on the court. So I don't know. I just want to
Well,
cut
that's no, that's the thing. I think. Look, I think he will win a championship at some point. I think Ime Udoka was enough to overcome the lack of alpha from Tatum. I do, but when you insert Joe Mazzulla, who for a period looked like he was just completely overwhelmed, completely outcoached, like you're gonna go through growing pains, and you saw him finally start to come around late in the series, especially like when they tied it up and that 3 game stretch where the Celtics just took over. Um, but it was never going to happen instantaneously with Tatum. Like he's not going to in the midst of all this like this turnover, this sort of chaos that's happening with the Udoka scandal, however you feel about it, like it doesn't really matter. The fact is like it's a distraction for the team.
true.
And having Jason Tatum not be able to step in and overcome those things, I don't think is a byproduct of his age. I think it's a byproduct of who he is as a person. So, to your point, I do think he's talented enough to win a championship. Despite that, I think he probably will at some point in his career. I think, though, that the Celtics have to have the everything in place around him, and the team needs a certain degree of stability in order for him to do that. Like there is a point at which the sheer talent alone will overcome it.
I feel you. So I do want to ask you about the whole Jaylen Brown situation, but we're gonna leave that for a little bit later.
Sure.
So moving on from the fucking bloodbath that you had to go through with Boston. Now you guys get through the Eastern Conference. You guys get your redemption from last year, and now you're going to the NBA Finals and you're going up against one of the best centers of all time.
Yep.
So initial thoughts as soon as you won Game 7 and you realize you're going up against Denver, Jamal, like were you optimistic? Were you hesitant? Were you nervous? Were you like, where were you at, my boy?
I think I mentioned this to you at the time when Denver was playing the Lakers. I said I want the Lakers to win this series because I think the Heat match up better with them, even knowing like that they've got LeBron and AD, and that was a problem for us in 2020. But I think like this team was better equipped to handle the Lakers. And by the way, I think we should talk about the Lakers in a sec because I have thoughts, but we'll come back to that.
Yo, shout out Santi. What up?
So yeah, shout out to Santiago.
Yeah.
But no, I did fear Denver going into this series. I was like, their length is going to be a problem for us. And it was, but I think the bigger problem, which I hadn't anticipated as much, was just the consistency with which Denver would shoot the ball. Because I think you saw this most glaringly actually in Game 1, where the Heat had moments where they were in the right position defensively, and they were getting like clean looks as far as like contested shots and switches and fighting through screens and things like that. And Denver was still just hitting everything. Like it felt like nothing the Heat did defensively was going to pump the brakes on Denver's offense. And that was the moment where like I'd already sort of known that, but it validated it for me going into the series where like if they continue to shoot at this clip, it's going to be impossible to overcome because there's nothing we're doing defensively that's working. And it's not for a lack of effort. It's not for a poor strategy. It's just all you can do in NBA basketball is contest a shot. And if it falls, it falls. Like that's there's nothing else you can do about it. So the length is certainly an issue. When the Heat stole a game in Denver, I did think like, okay, this makes the series interesting because I was convinced Denver was going to take one in Miami anyways. So I was like, as long as the Heat can split that, they've proven that they can win on the road in Denver, which they hadn't been able to do for like 3 years. As soon as Game 4, or as soon as Game 3 ended, going into Game 4, I was like, this team it seems like too overwhelming. Like, there's no point at which the Heat are going to be able to overcome the length, the talent. I will say, and this is, I mean, I'm curious to hear your thoughts because we've had a lot of discussions about Bam, and it feels like every other week you're texting me like I'm selling my Bam stock or I'm buying my Bam stock back. Now I'm selling my Bam stock again. So it's like I thought he had a really great series. I don't think anyone else on the Heat did, and I include Jimmy Butler in that.
He's gotten better. He's still relying a little bit too much on that jump shot. I fucking hate that pull up foul free throw shot. And I get it. He's trying to incorporate more into his game, and it makes him more versatile. I get it. But I was having this conversation with my friend Micah on the previous episode. Jokic, the disadvantage that Jokic had against
meaning
Bam,
that he creates.
Or... Yeah. My bad.
Okay.
I might have worded that wrong. But what he creates against Bam is that Jokic is so big that he could just overpower Bam. So obviously Bam can't do that to Jokic. But what Bam can do to make the playing field equal is use his athleticism. And the way to use his athleticism is to pull him out of the paint a little bit and fucking drive by him. And I feel like he didn't do that as much as I would have told him to do if I was the fucking coach. And he's just too reliant on that fucking jumper, man. Now, I get it. Like you got, in order to pull Jokic out, he has to believe that he can make that shot. And in order to believe to make the shot, you got to take it a few times. You got to make it in, and that's what's going to pull him out. But after a few times of Bam hitting the shot, I felt like he was a little bit too reliant on that, and then he didn't use his athletic ability enough to go up against Jokic.
I think
Um,
that's fair. My actual it's funny though. My biggest issue with Bam was not his offensive output this series, and this is honestly like nothing that he could control just because of the sheer size difference. The Heat got absolutely killed on the boards,
yeah,
particularly on the offensive end. Um,
yeah. I mean, besides in the
that
starting five,
that
besides
that frame for Jokic in particular, like Bam is our only true rebounder. I mean, like maybe you get like Kevin Love in there and get some decent minutes, and maybe get like him to grab one or two boards, but like Bam was the only one getting rebounds for us, and Jokic had a massive like advantage over him in that regard. So it's like even like Bam was actually like like getting his on the offensive end, in my opinion, at least enough to make a difference. Where it was really killing us was rebounding. Like there were no second chance points for the Heat, and there were a ton of second chance points for the Nuggets.
and what's also interesting is that Jokic gets his bad rap of being a bad defender, but he's not a terrible defender. It looks
No,
bad because he moves so slow, but he knows how to use his body. He knows how to like use his
yeah,
different angles. And like I said in the previous episode, he's two he's one of two of the smartest basketball players that I've seen in my lifetime. The other being LeBron as far as basketball IQ. Oh, you said game two, Miami won.
mm-hmm.
Game two, Miami won, but Denver was the only reason I feel like the only reason why Miami won is because Denver was missing those shots. They had good
Yeah,
looks, but they were just missing them. So Miami caught a bit of a break. And
yeah.
it's like you said, it wasn't because of a lack of effort. It's just Denver just wasn't hitting it, and Miami was able to leave Denver with one W.
Yeah, and I agree with you because that was why I don't want to say confident, but I felt okay about the series after game two because I was like, all right, like Denver is human. Like if you change up the defensive game plan, if you keep them guessing, like they're not going to shoot, whatever. I felt like at one point it felt like they were shooting 80%, although it was probably like 50%. But
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
but I was like, okay, like this does show you like if you can get them out their rhythm offensively, like they will miss shots. It's just difficult to do that. So like for that reason, I was like, there was maybe a glimmer of hope, but I was fairly confident they would take at least one game in Miami. I didn't think they would take both. So I thought the series would go longer for that reason. But yeah, look, you got to you got to give Denver credit. Like they are a very complete team. And going back to what you said about Jokic, this is like you're 100% right in terms of like his game is particularly on the offensive end is so complete, and he's a much better defender than people give him credit for. But I think I texted you this at the time. I was like, he has, even though he's like so skilled and so talented and so efficient, he has maybe the ugliest offensive game I've ever seen. Because he's
Yeah.
just like, there's nothing elegant about the way he moves. It looks like he's constantly just like stumbling up and down the floor. And like he does have a little bit of a tendency to flop and then use his size he does that like situationally because then he will turn around like the next play. I remember this vividly in game. I think it was game five where like he was posting up on Bam and he essentially like shoulder checked him dead in the chest, and the rest didn't call it. So like Jokic can be physical and aggressive when he chooses to be. Most of the time, he chooses to get off a shot that he probably makes and then stumbles to the floor and gets a foul called. So
I'm
it's like
yeah. I want to give you a little
he
bit. Yeah, I got my finish your thought. Sorry.
no. And like this isn't an indictment on him because I don't view him the same way I view like Harden. But I do think there's something like inartistic about his style of play that is it's like hard to watch at times, which is probably some of the aversion to him
Yeah.
that others have.
Yeah, I can see that. At times it's hard to watch him because he's very, yeah, there's nothing really like popping out to you. I do want to give a little bit of pushback. You said the whole like it's not as elegant. He has one of, if not the best footwork in the NBA. He has a move where he's backing up his defender and then he does like a spin off. He does like the up and under, but he goes up and under and he's able to do like another spin without moving his pivot foot. And I'll send you the video later. He did it a couple times during the season
Yeah.
and during the playoffs. But I don't know how the fuck he's able to pull it off. I think he's one of the for basketball heads like you and I, we like watching it, but I can see why the general public doesn't. A random thought, but going back to Bam real quick, one of the
Yeah,
things that fucking annoyed me too. So I saw Bam many a times. He would grab the rebound and then he would push up the floor himself, initiating the offense.
yeah.
For some reason, he would always like get the rebound, push it, initiate it, and then right after he gets over the half court line, he like pulls it back out and he tries to like set up the half court offense. And that's when I'm always like, dude, like you have the advantage against Jokic. If Jokic is backpedaling, just go at him, bro. Like there's no way he can stay in front of you. And that was bothering me so much.
Yeah, but see, I get why he was doing that. And you and I have talked about this previously. Bam does not have the handle to drive to the bucket like that when there's like people in the paint, when it's crowded around the paint. And I think the Nuggets wanted him to do that because then they would trap him when he goes to drive, and like they had incredible hands defensively this series. It felt like they were stripping the Heat like on every other offensive possession. Like they were
Yeah,
they were really good at getting a hand in there and not fouling.
yeah,
And Bam, I told you this at the time. I think this was against like the Knicks or something, where you said that to me. You're like, like Bam should be doing that every play because he like drove the length of the court, and just like went straight for the rack and put it up, and it looked great. And I told you at the time, I'm like, he can do that in transition when they leave it open, when they leave the lane open to him. But if anyone contests him while he's dribbling, he doesn't have the handle to. He's not Kawhi, he's not KD. He's like, even though he's about their size, he doesn't have the handle in the same way that they do to consistently control it and drive. I think Embiid has a better handle than him too, even in transition. And
yeah.
so
I
like
feel you.
Bam has to be able to play off ball. He can't lead the offense consistently. And there's nothing wrong with that if the Heat play into what his strengths are. And I think they do for the most part. But it is frustrating at times, no doubt, because you see him and you want him to elevate. You want him to take that step that like an Embiid has, or a Joker, or like some of these other guys that are around like 6'10 plus that can handle. And
Yeah.
Bam's just not that guy. That's not his game.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Okay, so before we move on from the Miami Heat, the last question I want to ask you regarding the Heat is you guys, everybody's in the offseason now. You guys are the second best, you guys were the second best team this season, losing to the Denver Nuggets. In your
Mm-hmm.
opinion, what do they need to do in order to get over the hump and finally win a championship?
I think they need two things. They need length, and they need more just someone other than Jimmy who's a consistent offensive player, meaning like you can rely on them night in and out. And like maybe Hero could have been that in this series. I doubt it because he was pretty much the same player he was the year before, where it's like
Right.
there are nights where he'll go off for 35 and there are nights where he'll go off for 8.
Yeah.
Like you just didn't know which version of Hero you were getting night in and night out. I think he's certainly talented enough to be that option, but I don't know if you can count on him to be that option.
Well, the
So
thing
be,
is that I mean, elephant in the room, the rumor is that Miami Heat, they're looking to get Game time, baby.
that's yep. We'll
Okay,
see.
so
We'll see.
if Miami Heat makes that trade, what are your feelings? And they're gonna give up Hero. Hero's definitely gonna be in that package. They're gonna give up
Yeah.
picks. I think it's like one of Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Duncan. Oh no, I think it was Duncan Robinson that was also gonna be a part of it.
Yeah, it's either going to be Duncan Robinson or Kyle Lowry. Struess and Vincent are unrestricted free agents, so you
Right,
can't
right,
really
right,
use them unless you do some sort of signing trade, which I don't think any team would do, at least not with them.
right.
Um, yeah, Hero will almost certainly be included in any package. I know the Heat would love to unload Lowry or Duncan or both. But the NBA cap thing is like, it's the biggest mystery in the world to me. I have no idea how the salary cap works. The whole
Yeah, me
matching
neither.
salary things is stupid. So like, I don't know. There are a couple beat writers for the Heat that I follow that try to explain this, but
You still end up
I
confused.
I still end up confused. Where it's like they'll have like these articles about like if it like different trade scenarios, like if they do this, this, and this, then they can make it this work, or like I don't know. It's really confusing. Um, but like there, I will say this: Dame Dame gives the Heat at least some consistent scoring on offense even during the droughts, because the Heat are prone to droughts on offense. Will that be enough to overcome the length disadvantage? Maybe. But I would love it. I was a little surprised to see, looking back on this series, that Omer Yurtseven, who's the backup center, really young guy. I was a little surprised to see he only got garbage time minutes. I understand from Spo's perspective why that was the case, but like Cody Zeller at times was an outright liability. And so there are moments where you have to give Bam rest, and I would have loved to see Yurt get some minutes during that time, just knowing and seeing how much of an issue Zeller became. And I like the effort that you get from Cody Zeller, but there's just some limitations with him. I think the Heat would have loved to get more time with Yurt and Bam on the floor at the same time. But again, like Yurt is another undrafted guy. He's a legit 7-footer. He's got some talent, but I think he's much further away than the team would like him to be.
Right.
Because in an ideal scenario, I think he's your 5, Bam's your 4. You and I have talked about this previously. Because I think Bam is best suited playing the 4. I think in an ideal scenario, he's the 5, Bam's the 4, Jimmy's playing the 2 or 3. Gabe Vincent's your 1, and then, use any one of Strus, Hero. I mean, we'll see now going forward, Duncan Robinson in that 2 or 3 position, depending on how you choose to play Jimmy. But like, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we get Dame. It'll be interesting to see
Are you for it?
what the team has to give up. Absolutely.
No question.
Yeah. I
Hero,
mean,
Duncan, Kyle Lowry, and picks. If it's those 3 players and picks, fuck it,
I'd
do
do
it.
that in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, the injuries recently with Dame do concern me.
Right.
But I think this team needs something else to put them over the edge. And I love Tyler Hero, but like we were hoping this year would be the year that he became consistent enough to make a difference late. And like, granted, the injury was a part of that. We didn't see what he would have been capable of doing in the postseason, but there's a difference between going from 6 man of the year to being a starter and giving a consistent 22 a night.
You
And
guys are at a
he
point where
wasn't that.
you guys are at a point where you have to make that move. Like
Yeah.
Jimmy has been the main guy on the Miami Heat for the last since 2020. 2020,
Yep.
the bubble season was the first year he was in Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's been the main guy. And yeah, I mean, I feel like he's giving you way more than you guys expected. 2 finals
Absolutely.
appearance and 3 in
Absolutely.
3 seasons. But unfortunately, it's not enough. And yeah, you can say that the team that he was going up against the finals, the Lakers with LeBron, AD, and that whole squad, and the Nuggets this year, I get it. The Miami Heat was an inferior team. But man, like I feel like you guys are at a point where you have to make that move to get another legitimate all-star, not a
I
fringe
agree.
all-star. So
I
like
agree.
I really want to I would love to see Dame with you guys. And the other rumored player that was with the whole trading to Miami, but it's not going to happen anymore, is because of Bradley Beal, and
Yeah.
we'll get into that a little bit later with his move to Phoenix. But um, but yeah, man, we'll see what happens with Miami in the offseason. Man, salute to your Heat organization, Pat Riley, the Godfather. You saw that stat that he's been in like 25% of NBA finals since like
Yeah.
it's fucking
Yeah.
insane, bro. That is fucking insane. Oh yeah, you're the one that sent it in the group chat. My bad. But okay, so I want you to just give me your thoughts about Denver. Like, do you see them in the foreseeable future just being in the finals for the next like how do you see the team and the organization? Do you see them being in the Western Conference Finals, the finals every season, every other season, and you know?
I think for them. Yes, if 2 things happen. One, injuries need to stay at a minimum. Because we saw. I mean, it sounds like Jamal Murray's ACL tear, looking back on it now, was so much worse than we even thought. I mean, you'll see, I know the NBA is different from the NFL, but I mean, you see guys come back to the NFL after like 8 months off of an ACL, and they're back to like an elite level. It sounds like Jamal Murray's was even worse than that, because it was like what 500 days or something like that where he wasn't. So like
Yeah.
essentially almost a year and a half where he wasn't really playing football or basketball, excuse me. Um, so I think that's a big deal. Obviously, Michael Porter has had his issues with injuries as well. So that's the first component. The second one is retention. It seems like they're set up to keep this roster mostly intact for next year and maybe even the following year.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it'll be about if they're not retaining certain players, how do they replace them? Um, and are they replacing them with the right pieces? I think that's doable for them. And I think, in fact, it's probably likely with them. We've seen how they've taken guys that have been mostly on other people's scrap pile and turned them into legitimate NBA starters, like good contributors. Um, but with any championship team, like the roster as currently constructed only exists for so long. You get maybe a 2 to 4 year window with a roster like that with its core intact and like having to swap pieces in and out. Beyond that, it's how do you replace the pieces that are going to get big money elsewhere. And
Mm.
so I think there will come a point where like, is Aaron Gordon going to be there 3 years from now? I would be surprised if Bruce Brown is there 3 years from now. Is Michael Porter there 3 years from now? Because like, A, is he even healthy? B, if he is, are you going to sign him to a long term extension, or do you
Right.
let someone else do it? Do you sign and trade him and get other assets? Like these are all questions that like look at the end of the day, if you keep Jokic, Murray, and Mike Malone, I think you are well positioned to return to at least the Western Conference Finals, not the NBA Finals, for several years to come. I think health is going to be the biggest question, and then roster retention beyond that.
Just about Jokic, man. The thing about Jokic is that he doesn't rely on his athletic ability, so you don't necessarily have that worry of like when his athleticism declines, what kind of a player he is. He's gonna be this kind of player for a while. This sluggish.
Yeah, and he's not. Is he even 30 yet? Like, is he like 28, 29, something like that?
I'll find out
Like
right now, but yeah,
he's
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 young.
easily got 4, 5, 6 years of prime left.
I think he's 28. To be honest, I think I heard someone say that
Yeah,
on one of the talking heads. He is. Yep, he's 28.
yeah.
He's
So he's got at least 6 years of his prime left, if not more.
and his and
So
yeah, and his game is. I keep saying the athleticism is not going to decline, and the more experience he gets, it's just like he's going to be able to handle every situation. He's already a great passer at a double team. He could already
yep,
any type of defense that they play against him. That's the problem that you guys had. Is like, yeah, you guys relied on the zone, but if your fucking best player on the opposite team is one of the best passers in the league, dump the ball into the free throw line. He's going to turn around and he makes all these looks and all these passes.
yeah.
So like
Well, and
that was another
but
thing you
that's the
guys had
thing.
problem.
Like, I think people. It's funny because people always look at the Heat and they go, "Oh yeah, they're one of the better zone teams in the league, and if you can break the zone, you can beat the Heat." And that's not entirely untrue, but I think it's also a little bit misunderstood. Um, Spoelstra has a different defensive game plan, game to game, and so
Mm.
you'll see the Heat. Like I think they played zone for game one. Games 2 and 3, they played man. Then they went back to zone in game 4, and it was more effective than it was the first time because the Nuggets weren't prepared for it. And so, like, I think, like, to at least defensively to put the Heat in a box and say, oh, they just do this really well, I think is a little bit disingenuous. But you're 100% right in the fact that, like, I don't think it really matters what defensive game plan you have for Jokic. He is immune to pretty much any of them. And so you just have to hope that he has an off night or a night where like everyone else is off and Jokic has to score 40 because that's pretty much the only way that you can beat Denver.
Yo, I think I would if I was Spoelstra, I think I would have made him be the scorer every night. I feel
I
like
think he wanted to. I think, you know, the length was an issue. Like, so you tried to force Jokic to be the scorer, and then Aaron Gordon goes off for 26. You know, you trying to take Murray out of it, force Jokic to be the scorer. And if other guys step up, then that game plan is moot. You know, you
yeah,
saw the
but
same thing with Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown had like 22. You know, it's
yeah.
like so like you can try to force Jokic to be the main scorer, and I think they did. They effectively took Murray out of it for large stretches of games 3 and 4. Um, but yeah, like at some point, like if other dudes are stepping up, you can only do so much.
Question out of left field. Is Jokic the best player in the league for you?
Right now, yes,
Hmm,
and
interesting.
I think it's inarguable. I think
Inarguable.
yeah, because you and I talked about this previously on the last pod with Embiid. Like towards the end of the season, I was with everyone in the sense of like I don't know if Jokic is worthy of 3 consecutive MVPs. Um, but at the same time, you and I thought that last year Embiid should have won it, and then probably this year it would be Jokic. Like, or it should have been anyways. Like that for me was the biggest thing where I was like, Jokic, I think had the better. It's easy to look back now in retrospect, seeing the championship, seeing how he played in the postseason, and say Jokic had the better season. But I think it goes beyond that. It's a lot of it is Embiid should have won that MVP last year. Jokic should have won MVP this year. And that's like, this is one of the things that annoys me about the NBA media just generally is I think they are all, not all, by and large, a lot of the NBA media are what I would call like institutional talking heads, meaning
Mhm.
like they are afraid to go against convention. They tend to align their opinions with the history of the NBA as opposed to making bold statements or like bold not I don't even want to say hot takes because I hate that term, but like being willing to put yourself out there with a contrarian take and possibly be wrong. I think
Yeah.
the especially you see this especially among the voting members of the NBA media. It's like who's everyone else voting for? That's who I'm voting for. And I wish that wasn't the case, but more often than not, it is.
To me, it's between Giannis and Jokic. Giannis has a bigger. Jokic is not a terrible defense, like we keep saying, a defender, like we keep saying, but Giannis's defensive impact is greater than Jokic. But
Yeah,
you can also say that Jokic's offensive game cancels out Giannis's offensive game. So it's like Giannis has some pluses, pros. Jokic has some pros, but then Giannis's cons are like it's just like man, to me
also, look,
it's
I think you saw this a little bit, and I know he was injured, but you saw this with the Buck series against the Heat. Um, Giannis still hasn't added any range to his game,
he
and
has, but
that
not to the point that I get what you're saying. He has,
no, like he's worked on it, but it's not to the point where he can use it in a critical situation
yeah,
late.
I get it, I
And
get it.
that's what it ultimately comes down to. That's the most important thing is like when there's less than a minute left in the game, do you trust Giannis to pull up like a deep two even like from 22 feet and hit that, or
But the
whatever
thing
it is,
is,
20 20
but the thing
feet.
is, when he doesn't pull up from 20 feet, he uses his fucking Giannis strength and he does that crazy Euro step and dunks it on someone. So
I agree.
he's able to
I
hide
agree,
away
but
that
then again,
deficiency.
I agree, but then you see, like again, this is what the Heat did. It was, for lack of a better term, it was like hack a Giannis. Like force it, foul him so hard that he can't get the easy bucket, and force him to go to the free throw line where he's shooting what 60-70%. Like he's not a terrible free throw shooter, but do you want him there in clutch time with the series on the line? I don't. And I think until he has a consistent jump shot from more than like 10 feet out, I think that Jokic will remain the better player in the league. And I
Hmm.
love Giannis. I think like you're right, you're spot on about like his like defensive effort and his defensive efficiency. The athleticism just jumps off the screen. Like he's so exciting to watch, and he is undoubtedly one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world. Um,
Yeah.
but I want to see that next dimension to his game. I want to see it evolve further because I think right now, like you're seeing teams adjust to it. It was he was able to overcome it in 2021. You're seeing teams adjust to it now,
Yeah.
and it's becoming a problem.
Yeah, it is. All right, my man. So we got through the Miami Heat season. You gave me your season wrap
Yep.
up. I love hearing your takes, your insights. We're gonna see what happens when Miami this all season. Maybe they get that Damian Lillard trade. But before we move on to more current events, I do want to highlight a lot some other moments from the playoffs this
Yeah.
past season. And we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording the pod. I want to hear what was one moment from this past playoffs that really stuck out to you. And I did add a little stipulation. the stipulation was it had to be outside of a Miami Heat moment.
Yeah.
Because I think the universal answer for every fucking basketball head is Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler going crazy in round one against the Bucks. I think that's like
Mhm.
down the moment. But there were so many other moments in the playoffs that I feel like people just kind of forgot about and not really highlighting.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to see where your head's at. Is there one other playoff series, a moment that really stuck to you
Yep.
that you could talk about right now?
Yeah, and this is actually going to tie into what I brought up earlier because I really want to talk about this. But I was so thoroughly entertained by the whole Dylan Brooks Lakers LeBron thing. Like I just to me like that was like must see TV.
It was.
And it was so entertaining. Like not having put my team not having played against Dylan Brooks, I don't hate him. I don't have any issue against him personally. Um, but I like that he sort of became like the consensus villain in the NBA, but but he wasn't skilled enough to back it up. So it was like you just see him sort of retreat into his shell. And like I don't like dogging players like that, but I mean I'm not afraid to be critical of players, but I you know that it like piling on feels a little bit dirty.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
feel you.
but I you know like that was one of the more fun moments of the post or yeah, that was one of the more fun moments of the postseason. Like
I'm with
I
you,
enjoyed it
man.
so much.
I'm with you, man. Dylan Brooks is saying what a lot of players are thinking. Like, yo, LeBron's old. Like,
The Lakers are making that run. They get it to 14. You and LeBron have that exchange. There are people out there that say maybe you shouldn't do that with one of the better players in the game. What were you thinking?
I don't care. He's old. You know what I mean? I was waiting for that. I was expecting him to do that game 4, game 5. He wanted to say something when I got my 4th foul. He should have been saying that earlier on. But, you know, I poke bears. I don't respect no one until they come and give me 40. I pride myself on, you know, what I do is defense and taking on any challenge that's on the board.
like
Yeah.
If I was Dylan, I mean, hopefully I would have better skills than Dylan. But like, I would be like, yo, man, like LeBron's old, man. Like, we get it. He's one of the best players ever, but like, he's old. We're the younger team. We have the better, as far as like the best, one of the better players in the league. We have one of them, John Morant, even though mentally he was going through whatever. But like, Memphis should have that series should have gone 7, and Memphis maybe should have won, honestly, man. So I'm totally with you, bro.
Yeah, well, so here's what that's part of what I want to talk about the Lakers for a second.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
I don't think they were as good as people think they were going into the Western Conference Finals. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm not convinced the Warriors were as good as we thought they were going into the round before the Western Conference, the whatever the second round.
Second round, yeah.
Um, and so I think people got sort of caught up with like the luster and the star power of Los Angeles, not just like LeBron, but like the stars in the stands, all the courtside like
Right.
celebrities, all that stuff, and the history of the Lakers. And the Lakers were clearly a better team than we gave them credit for going into the postseason.
Right.
But I think some of the championship expectations were a little bit misguided in the sense that I don't think Memphis was a particularly great team, and we especially not shooting from beyond the arc. And we saw that big time in the postseason. But I mean, like, first of all, they were never right after the string of incidents from Ja, and then even beyond that, like they were a limited offensive team. So come the postseason, like someone, even though LeBron's old, like someone with his level of basketball IQ is going to find a way to beat the Grizz. We saw Golden State go 7 against the Kings, who I think are a really fascinating team. And I was a big De'Aaron Fox fan when he came out of college. And I was afraid that like 2 years ago with like all the injuries and stuff, I was afraid that he was going to be a bust. So I'm glad to see that team is starting to come into their own. But Warriors teams from years past would have just boat raced them. They would have shot them out of the gym, and that would have been over in 5 or 6 games. And so we have like Lakers Warriors meeting in round 2, and it went 7, and people were like, "Oh, the
Nah, one
Lakers
six.
like oh, went 6. You're right.
Yeah,
Sorry."
Lakers 1-6. Yeah.
But I think people still looked at that and go, like you see the Warriors coming off the championship last year, and people know it's not the same team, but I think you got caught up in the idea of the Lakers beating the defending champs, and they go, oh, well, how good is this team? Can they win a championship? But I think we saw the answer when it came to Denver. Like, no, the Lakers were a limited team. We just were willing to ignore that in rounds 1 and 2 because they were playing so well against subpar playoff teams that were not capable of winning a championship anyways.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think the Lakers, all things considered, especially considering where they were to start the year with Russ and like all the issues that they had,
Dude, they
that
started
was a
2 and
hell of a
10.
run. Yeah, that was a hell of a run in the postseason.
Really
But
was.
I think any sort of like expectation of a championship was just completely misplaced.
So I kind of want to take back what I said a little earlier, saying how like I think Memphis should have won that series. I take that back because I totally forgot that they lost Brandon Clark towards the end of the season with a fucking Achilles tear, and then
Yep, I forgot about that too, actually,
yeah,
until you
and
said
then
that just
also
now.
Steven Adams, fucking his knee was all fucked up, and
Yep,
he didn't
he didn't
play
even play.
exactly. His last game I think was in sometime in February or March. So like as far as bigs, Memphis was very limited. They were playing fucking Tillman alongside Jaren Jackson, and Tillman,
Yep.
to his praise, he was able to hold his own to a certain point. But yeah, I totally forgot about that. So the Lakers should have won the series, which they did. But the second round against the Warriors, man, we all knew that fucking punch that Draymond Green had against Jordan Poole in training camp was like a fucking moment, and we knew that the team was fucked up ever since. But I guess we all didn't know how bad it was until the exit interviews that we
No,
saw.
but that's the thing we did like it, and because it's not even about the Jordan Poole thing. Like we saw all season, the Warriors couldn't win on the road. So how can you expect a team like that to go suddenly go on the road at the most critical point of the season and consistently win? Like that's what any team that wins a championship needs to win on the road. So like I know we're like we see the pedigree and we go, oh well, they'll figure it out. But like that's not the case. They hadn't been able to do it all season. So what? And like I know this flies in the face of what we were talking about with the Heat earlier, but it's like that's why our expectations for the Heat were what they were because we didn't expect them to flip a switch and suddenly start hitting threes when they hadn't been able to do it all season. So why did we expect the Warriors to suddenly flip a switch and be able to win on the road when they hadn't been able to do it all season? Like I think we just got distracted
Yeah.
by how much they had won previously, and we weren't considering what team they are this season.
Yeah, man. Clay, man. I'm a little worried about Clay, man, because last season you can make the excuse it was his first full season since fucking his whole body breaking down. So okay, cool, that's an excuse. But then this season was his first full NBA season and going into the playoffs, but like he just wasn't good, bro. He just
Yeah,
was not good. And after all those injuries, after all those surgeries, I think the Warriors really need to ask themselves is Clay really going to be able to get back to close to his old self again?
I think
And
that's fair.
and then the whole thing with Draymond, like I don't know if you know this, but Draymond he opted out of his contract, so now he's an
Mhm.
unrestricted free agent. And Rich Paul is like put out notifications saying that this was planned all along, and now they have the ability to really talk how the Warriors and Draymond could really benefit from each other, whatever. But like, yo, man, I don't know, man. I'm worried, man, because I really want to see Clay, Dre, and Steph. I want to see them retire together. I really want to see those three retire
Mhm.
and end their careers as a Warrior. But I don't know if it's gonna happen because Steph is just unreal, bro. So your answer was the whole Dylan Brooks and the Lakers saga as far as the moment that really stuck to you. My
Yeah,
answer was fucking Sacramento Kings versus the Warriors in the first round, going 7. That
that
was
was great.
that series was amazing. And game
Yeah,
7, Steph Curry he put his balls on the table and was like, I'm the fucking best player with 50 points with all the pressure. And like, dude, it's like I love it when because everybody kind of has Steph in like top 5, but like they mention him, but it's kind of like, he's the best shooter of all time. He finally got his finals MVP. But then like then you get moments like game 7 where it's like, no, all the pressure is on the Warriors because they can't lose. They won a championship last season. They're gonna lose to a team that's been to the playoffs for the first time in 16 seasons or some shit. It's like, is this really gonna happen? And then Steph Curry's like, yo, don't worry about it. Like, I got it. 50 points. We out. We're going to the next round. And I love seeing moments like that. And then Steph
Yeah,
is,
and
yeah,
like
man.
again, credit to De'Aaron Fox for going toe to toe. Like that's an exciting team
Facts.
moving forward.
And it's
And
something new, yo. It's something. It's like new
yeah,
blood in the playoffs or making deep playoff runs.
absolutely,
I like seeing that
absolutely,
too.
and even like look to your point about like Steph and the credit he gets for his greatness. I look, I think some of the criticism is fair. Um, like yeah, he hadn't won an NBA MVP, Finals MVP until last year. Like there, it was Iggy before that. It was KD after that. Like like there were. I don't think the questions were unfair, especially because we saw that 73 win team uh, put up ridiculous numbers, and Steph in particular during the regular season, and then Cleveland found a way to make him look pedestrian.
Yeah.
And so I think Steph is one of the all-time greats. I think he revolutionized the game, and I love watching him play. But yeah, like the criticism until last year was not unwarranted.
Mm.
But
Well,
I think that's a different conversation for another time because that we could go on forever about that.
yeah, no, 100%. And he still has maybe like 2 or 3 seasons as far as like prime stuff left in him.
Sure.
So we definitely want to see that keep going. Going back to your point as far as the Lakers, one thing that I found interesting going in the Denver series specifically, I was talking about this in the last pod with my friend Micah. Like Austin Reeves was such a revelation this season.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think the Lakers, they should have played through Reeves a little bit more. They kind of like faulted back to like LeBron being the player on the Lakers. So like, all right, let's run it through him and AD.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Reeves at certain moments in the series, like it was just like you could tell that he was the one that Denver was having problems really finding an answer for. And
Mhm.
I would have had Reeves and AD doing a lot more pick and roll and just having Reeves being a real important instrument in the Lakers offense. So I don't know. What do you see? And would you give Reeves the bag? Would you like if another team offers him the max, would you want the Lakers to match it? Like where are you with him? And
If I'm the Lakers, I do want to retain him. Again, like this kind of ties back into what we were talking about earlier. It's like I have no idea how the NBA salary cap works, what it talks about when in terms of like unloading contracts, moving players, retaining players, like all that stuff. Like in a vacuum, all things considered, yes, if I'm the Lakers, I want to keep Reeves. Absolutely. And I would pay him whatever I have to because I'm trusting the fact that he has the like mentality to continue to get better. And look, like that's part of the like that's part of the reality of the NBA salary cap and CBA and all that stuff is like you have to pay certain players a specific amount because that's what the contract dictates, meaning the CBA, not the player's contract. Um, but like, if you have to move on from him 2 years from now, you find a way to do it. Like the Lakers have done that with they did it with Westbrook, they did that with Kuzma, they did that with like so many players that have come before. So I think you pay him what you pay him. You hope that he continues to grow and get better. You're out from under the Westbrook contract, so that's good at least. Maybe you can add another piece, especially like if Reeves is taking over for LeBron. Like I do think you need a younger wing player to sort of step into that role, and who knows, maybe it's Rui, maybe it's someone they have internally or like in house. I tend to doubt that, but I think you go hunting for talent. You keep the core of LeBron, AD, and Reeves, and see if you can make it interesting next season.
so this goes hand in hand with the next topic that I kind of want to talk about, the current events. Literally today we found out that there was a proposed trade that's still in the workings of Bradley Beal going to the Suns, and the Suns are
Mm-hmm.
giving up Chris Paul, they're giving up Landry Shamet, they're giving up several second round picks and a pick swap as well.
Yeah.
So no, okay, so Chris Paul going to Washington Wizards. There's been reports that it's not going to happen. Washington Wizards, they're going to figure out a way to let Chris Paul leave and make him join a contending team. So now going back to the Lakers, is Chris Paul someone you are targeting? If you were Rob
No,
Pelinka,
no, because he doesn't fill a role that you need. Like, and especially like given his age and his injury history, and especially in the postseason, I think like for the reasons you just outlined, like I'd much rather have Reeves in that role. I'd much rather have Chris Paul is at his best when he is when he is running the offense, when he is setting up the half court and putting the pieces in position to score. LeBron can do that, and he probably needs to at his age because he can't hustle the way he used to. We see him taking possessions off, and it's crazy that he's still putting up like 30-point games
Fucking
and like
insane, bro.
averaging damn near a triple double in the postseason. But you can't add someone like Chris Paul, who's as old as he is and as injury prone as he is, to an already old and injury prone team. You need youth, you need athleticism, you need young blood in that team. And so if it were me, if I'm the Lakers, I'm not touching that.
Man, but what if Chris Paul
Nope.
and
Nope.
no, granted, Chris Paul's not gonna go for this, but what if they get Chris Paul and they talk him about coming off the bench, being a backup point guard?
That would interest me as long as I'm not paying him $40 million a year, but
Yeah, I
I
mean
think you have to.
contract. I don't know about the contract. Just literally just the idea of him coming off the bench as the backup point guard, because like you just said, like at this point, man, he's injury prone. He's going to get injured. He's been injured, I think, every season since, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 seasons. There's that hamstring pull that he had in Game 6 with the Warriors, and he couldn't play Game 7, which everybody thought Houston would win if Chris Paul was healthy, me included. And then he has a whole bunch of a bunch of injury examples. But man, yo, I don't know, man. I think there's also rumors that the Clippers could be looking to pick him up, which I don't know what the fuck that's about. Like, great, you pick him up. What's that gonna do? And going back to the other half of that trade, Bradley Beal going to the Phoenix Suns. So now the Phoenix Suns has another big three. You got KD, you got Booker, now you got Bradley Beal. Listen, man, I'm gonna say this. You know I'm a KD fan. I'm not liking the way this is turning out for KD, bro. He's jumping way too well. He went to Phoenix Suns last season, so he's not jumping to the Phoenix Suns again. But man, he's looking a lot worse than fucking LeBron, man. It's looking like he's only playing on teams with fucking like 2 other legitimate all-stars consistently.
You're
I
talking
don't
about legacy or
like his legacy. Like
Yeah.
ever since he went to the Warriors, like there's that whole Warriors thing. And then from the Warriors, he's like, I'm going to Brooklyn to play with Kyrie. And then he wanted to get James Harden. They gave James Harden. That didn't work out. Then he leaves and he only wants to go to Phoenix to play with Chris Paul and Booker. And now he's staying with Phoenix. And now like they're making Bradley Beal come. And it's like, yo, I just don't like the way it looks with KD, bro. Like you already have a lot of shit on your back for joining the Warriors. Everybody says those 2 championships and those 2 final MVPs, there's an asterisk to it. And it's like, I don't know, man. It's like I get it, but at the same time, it's like, don't you want to like shut these guys up? Like, give them no fucking excuses. And it just seems like in his defense, if he doesn't care, he doesn't care. He doesn't have to care. But just me personally, I'm a little like, I don't know.
I don't disagree with you, and I think everyone, even KD, is aware that his legacy will forever be linked to his decision to go to the Warriors. You and I both agree that he is supremely talented, independent of that, and probably could have won a championship on his own. I think a big piece of this that people are not considering is where he landed and when he landed there. Meaning, he got drafted by the Sonic, and then went to OKC. And I think people at the time go, Westbrook is a star. They moved on from Harden, who was 6th man of the year, but became a star in his own right, and go, why did that team underachieve? But I think that was what people were saying in like, whatever it was, 2015, 2016, something around there. You look back now and you go, we all know, I mean, Santi and I have been arguing about this for years, but now everyone sees what Westbrook truly is, which is a terrible shooter, a ball-centric point guard who really does not play well with anyone. And there's a reason why he was able to average a triple-double when KD was gone, because it became the Westbrook show. We see Harden absolutely melt in the postseason because he's ball-centric. He plays for the foul. He jacks up a million threes, and he's a great three-point shooter. But, like, there's a reason none of them have been able to win independent of KD. And I think, look, you can argue that KD hasn't been able to win independently of them, but I think if you had even complementary pieces around him, that he could have won, like in a Kawhi-like situation with the Raptors, where you've got plus players playing alongside him and he can be that X factor that gets you over the edge. But at no point in his career until he went to Golden State, which again is now counts against him, at no point in his career was he playing with complementary pieces that fit his game. And while he can fit with pretty much anyone, in order to win championships, it needs to be reciprocated. And the people he's playing with need to be able to play well with him. And so KD has this versatility to his game. He's a better than we give him credit for defensive player.
Yeah.
And he's just so supremely skilled and talented in every facet of the game. His leadership isn't great, but I think he has enough talent to overcome that.
What's so interesting is that like before Kyrie demanded the trade to go to leave, like they were playing amazingly. They were playing amazing. And I feel like we were finally going to be able to see like what Kyrie and KD can do. But of course,
they were never going to win a championship because Kyrie doesn't play defense, and like the Nets never played defense well. It was just about like I brought this example up last time. It's like Big 12 football. It's the first one is 60 wins, and it's like that doesn't win championships in the NBA. I think there was a ceiling on that team.
I'm with you, man. Kyrie doesn't play defense, but look, there's been many times that we just didn't see the full potential because that season where KD came back from the Achilles tear. And he literally took Brooklyn to Game 7 against Bucks. Kyrie got injured in Game 5 or 6, and he couldn't finish out the series. And everybody thinks that they would have won if Kyrie was healthy. And if they win that series, then they would have. I don't know who they would have played in the second round, the round after that. But you couldn't make the argument they could go to the finals, and we could finally see what that duo would have been like. And then
I don't disagree, but I would have much rather seen a KD career where, he got paired with like, look at the Jokic Murray situation, even like Giannis and Middleton or Giannis and Drew Holiday, to an extent, LeBron and AD. Like, I would have loved to have seen what KD's career looked like if he got paired with plus players that complemented his game well and played defense and just allowed him to be that, like, independent of his time in Golden State.
I feel you. The Bradley Beal piece of this trade, how do you think that's gonna fit? Do you think it's gonna? I like it. As far as Bradley Beal being a third option, that's kind of crazy.
I think it fits. I think he really and the length on that team is going to be just ridiculous. But
Bradley Beal's a third option, bro. That's fucking insane, dog.
But this is what we said about Harden in Brooklyn. Like, I think it's like,
but Harden chose
this team. Yeah, but I think this team is more than talented enough to win a championship. We'll see if Frank Vogel can coach them to that championship, because I think the coach is going to be the most important aspect of this team winning a championship or not.
And I think they only have like 6 players on the contract right now, so they still have a lot of work to do.
They're going to have a lot of undrafted guys.
Yeah,
their bench is going to be a lot of like veterans minimums and undrafted guys.
Yeah, so hopefully, depending on the veterans that they get, we'll see what the roster looks like at like September. But yeah, man, I don't know. Bradley Beal being your third option. Bradley Beal is not James Harden. For the examples that we have of him in the playoffs, he hasn't really choked. I think his health is a question. You can question that because the last couple seasons he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't been finishing the seasons. But we'll see what happens, man. Yeah, man. Yo, there's a lot of other stuff that we weren't able to get. So maybe we'll do another episode. But yo, Reed, before we sign off, man, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talking basketball. I love hearing your perspective, your insights, your takes, your thoughts. And
likewise, my friend.
My guy, we gotta do this soon. And I hit you up. We'll talk via text and all that good stuff. But I'll see you soon. All right, my man?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, D, and always happy to talk hoops with you.
My guy. We'll talk soon, my guy.
Later.